The auction block stood under the high desert sun like a gallows without rope. Flies clung to sweat-slicked necks. A man could buy anything there: tools, cattle, convicts, or girls. Clay Bledsoe had come to buy a mule. He left with a child. She was maybe 13, maybe 15, small enough her boots didn't touch the floor when they sat her on the cedar plank for bidding. A tag around her neck read, "Too far gone." Someone had scrawled it in charcoal, half smudged by her collarbone. Her wrists were roped, her eyes were empty. The bidding started low. A miner opened at $2, said he'd put her to work sorting rocks. Another man laughed and bid 3. He wanted a quiet one to mind his still. Clay didn't speak. He studied her. She didn't flinch at the laughter, didn't cry, didn't turn her head. $4, 5. When the auctioneer called 6, Clay Bledsoe lifted his hand. No one raised him. "Sold," the man declared. "To the broke rancher with more land than sense." Clay stepped forward, handed over the bills folded like a slow apology. The girl didn't look at him. When the rope came off her wrists, she stood, bones stiff as fence rails, and followed without question. They rode out of town in silence. The land Clay called his ran 50 miles from bone-dry arroyo to scrub pine and limestone hills. Wind cut through it like a rasp. He lived alone in a house his father built after the war, a house that leaned into itself like an old man praying. His cattle were thin, his debts were wide. No one expected Clay to make it another year. He gave her the smaller room, the one that used to be his sister. Left her a pail of water, a bar of lye soap, and an old dress from the attic. When he knocked the next morning, she was already dressed and sitting by the window. Didn't look up, didn't speak. "Name's Clay," he said. She blinked. "What's yours?" She didn't answer. They moved into a rhythm, him with the cattle, her with the chores. She swept the porch, carried water from the well, learned the stove's stubborn flue, and how to trap a jackrabbit without snapping her own fingers. She didn't speak for 3 weeks. Then one morning, Clay found a rattlesnake laid out across the doorstep, head severed clean. She stood behind him with the shovel still wet with blood. "That thing come near the chickens," she said. Clay nodded. He didn't ask again for her name. Word spread quick, like wind over grass fire. Bledsoe bought himself a feral one. Don't even talk. Scarred up like she lived in a dogfight pit. Some said she'd been in a brothel outside of Del Rio. Others claimed she was a killer's orphan left wild in the hills. None of them were right and none of them mattered. She kept to herself, and she worked. By fall, the cattle were thicker. The roof stopped leaking. Clay caught himself talking more, just to fill the silence, even if she never answered. He started calling her Holly, not because she told him to, but because it felt wrong not to call her something. She never corrected him. Then came the horse thieves. They hit the neighboring ranch first, cut the fence, took 4 stallions and a mare heavy with foal, left the barn hand for dead. When Clay found out, he set a lamp in every window and moved his rifle beside the bed. Holly moved hers beside the door. The night they came, Clay was already awake. 3 men. 1 stayed with the horses, 2 came up the porch. Clay didn't hear them, but Holly did. She was in the doorway before the dog even growled. When the first man tried to pry the latch, she opened it and drove the kitchen knife up under his chin. He staggered back. Clay heard the gurgle, heard the second man shout and fire wild. He ran to the door, gun raised, only to see Holly kneel, roll the wounded man's pistol from his hand, and shoot the second straight through the heart. The third turned and ran. Holly chased him, barefoot in the dirt, face blank as smoke. When she came back, she had his hat, blood on her shirt, a bullet in her arm she hadn't noticed. Clay didn't speak. He helped her clean the wound, hands shaking more than hers. She winced once. "They were gonna kill you," she said. "I ain't let 'em." It was the first time she'd ever said his name. He tried to say thank you. She stood, wobbled once, and went to her room without another word. After that, folks stopped talking about the girl Clay Bledsoe bought. They talked about the girl who left 3 men dead in the dust, one with a knife, one with a pistol, one with his own boots twisted backwards from the way she brought him down. Clay buried them in the hill behind the stable. The sheriff came once, asked a few questions. Holly said nothing, just looked him in the eye till he turned away. Self-defense, he muttered. Girl like that, she's got reason to be jumpy. Clay didn't correct him. In town, they started calling her Holly Bledsoe. She never smiled. But when she sat beside Clay in church, shoulders squared, jaw set like she was born for a rifle stock, no one asked why a girl with no name bled for a ranch with no fortune. They all knew too well what made a thing worth keeping, and what it meant when someone was willing to kill for it. That winter brought no snow, only wind. It rattled the boards of the barn and peeled the skin from cattle ribs. Clay lost 2 calves to the cold, one to sickness. Holly didn't flinch when she slit their throats to end the suffering. She worked without asking, bled without complaint, and Clay began to forget the girl she'd been on that auction block. He never touched the tag he'd kept, too far gone, tucked in a drawer with old stamps and a pistol he hadn't fired since his brother's funeral. By spring, there were whispers again, not about Holly this time, but Clay. Folks said he had no right raising a girl like her alone. One rancher's wife crossed the street when she saw them in town. Another told the preacher Clay should find her a proper home, as if they hadn't already built one out of sweat and silence. Clay didn't answer. Holly didn't blink. They rode back into the canyon and didn't come back for weeks. Out on the range, the fences had started to fail. One by one, posts rotted, nails loosened, wire sagged. Clay couldn't afford hired help. Holly patched what she could, arms raw from sun and barbed wire. They camped out some nights under the stars, both too tired to talk. She watched the sky like it might offer something. He watched her and wondered what it cost her to stay quiet all the time. One night they heard gunfire far off, echoing like a lie across the rocks. Clay rose slow, hand to the Winchester. Holly was already gone. He found her 10 minutes later at the ridge, staring down at smoke rising from the Teague property. Flames licked the roof, no riders in sight, no sounds of horses. Teague's boys ran with the Cutler gang last year, Clay muttered. Could be a payback. Holly didn't answer, her hands curled at her sides. I don't owe them, Clay said. No, she said, you don't. But her knuckles were white. The fire died by morning. So did Teague's youngest, shot through the back trying to run. They buried him under the pecan tree and didn't speak of it again. 2 weeks later, someone strung up Clay's dog outside the barn, a message plain as spit. Clay found it first, jaw clamped so tight his teeth cracked. Holly said nothing, just knelt by the blood-dark dirt, took the collar off, and set it beside the porch where the dog used to sleep. Clay started sleeping with the rifle across his knees. Holly sharpened every blade they owned. Then came the letter. It arrived wrapped in a flour sack, no return address. Clay read it once, jaw twitching. Holly took it from his hands and read it again. The handwriting was familiar, crooked like barbed wire. You know who it is, she said. He nodded, Levon Maddox. Holly's head turned slow. He's back, Clay said. Thought he ran to Arizona. Ran with half my cattle. Put my brother in the ground when he got caught. Holly read the letter again. It wasn't a threat. It was a promise. Coming soon, you and the girl. Won't be quiet this time. She folded it once, handed it back. I'll kill him, she said. Clay stared at her. He's got a dozen men. I only need one shot. No, Clay said. I'll handle it. She didn't argue. But that night the shotgun by the door was gone. He found it in her room, barrel cleaned, shells lined up on the sill like prayer beads. She was ready. The next week, Clay rode into town to sell 2 yearlings. Holly stayed behind. When he came back, the barn door was swinging open, and there was blood on the ground. He dropped the reins and ran. Inside, he found one of Maddox's boys slumped against the wall, mouth caved in like a kicked melon. Holly sat in the hayloft, rifle across her lap, face streaked with sweat and blood that wasn't hers. "Two of M," she said. "Where's the other?" She pointed with her chin. Clay followed the trail out back. Found the second man crawling toward the creek, one leg bent the wrong way. His mouth worked soundless when he saw Clay. Clay lifted the rifle. "Wait," Holly called. He turned. "Let me." She stood behind him now, eyes hollow as glass. He nodded and stepped aside. The shot snapped like a branch in the wind. Later, when they sat by the stove, she spoke again, voice low. "They think I'm his daughter." Clay didn't answer. "They think I was born mean." "You were." She looked at him. "You don't know. I know you bled for this place, for me." She looked away. "That don't make me good." "No," he said, "it makes you mine." Her eyes shone, but she didn't cry, just nodded once, slow. And the tag that once called her too far gone. She burned it that night, alone, standing in the dark with the wind in her hair and a match between her fingers. By summer, no one rode within 10 miles of the Bledsoe place without reason. The tracks of strangers never lingered long. Word spread the ranch was cursed, or worse, watched. Some swore they'd seen a girl in a faded blue dress pacing the ridge at dawn, rifle in her hands, eyes like cold ash. They weren't wrong. Holly rose with the sun and watched the fence lines like scripture. She marked the wind, listened for the hum of hooves or the crow's scream that didn't belong. Her silence grew heavier, more deliberate. Even Clay spoke less. They had no need for many words. Between them passed something older than talk, shared labor, worn tools, fresh blood rinsed from the steps without asking who'd spilled it. The land hardened with them. One evening, Clay found a sack nailed to the door. Inside were 7 fingers and a chunk of mane from one of their lost mares. The message was simple: your turn. Clay burned it in the stove and salted the doorstep. Holly said nothing, but she didn't sleep that night. She walked the property until sunrise, rifle cradled like a child. 3 days later, the well went dry. It wasn't natural. Someone had packed it with sand and horsehair, crushed glass scattered through it like snow. Clay cursed low under his breath. Holly dug without stopping until her hands bled. When she finished, she wrapped her palms in hide and went to the ridge alone. She didn't come back until morning, cheeks crusted with grit, eyes rimmed with red. "Found tracks," she said. "Maddox's camp ain't more than a day out, 20 riders, maybe less now." He didn't ask what she'd done. Instead, Clay loaded the wagon with tins, salt, jerky, and ammunition. He pulled out his old cavalry coat and the Springfield wrapped in oilcloth beneath the floorboards. When he turned, Holly was already strapping her boots. "I ain't leaving you behind," he said. "I ain't staying," she answered. The desert swallowed them before noon. They rode quiet like wolves, stopped once to water the horses at a creek where the trees bowed low and the air stank of copper. Holly pointed to a ridge where vultures circled. "Something fresh," she said. Clay climbed up to check. It was a dog, skinned and nailed to a cross made of fence posts. The kind of message that came from men with no country and less soul. Clay spat in the dirt and rode back down. "They're expecting company," he told her. "Good," she said. "So are we." They found the camp by moonrise. Tents and whiskey fires, men shouting over cards, at least 15 left breathing. Clay studied it from the rocks, whispering names: Maddox, Sim Dory, Job Hensley, 3 others from the list his brother used to keep in his Bible. "You don't have to." "I ain't scared," Holly said. "I know. But scared might be what saves you." "I already died once," she said. "Everything after's just revenge." She moved like smoke through the rocks, barefoot again, knife in her belt. Clay waited behind, rifle steady. She crept to the edge of the firelight, struck 2 matches against a saddlebag, and let the flame eat the liquor barrel dry. The fire took fast. By the time they started shouting, Clay had dropped the first one through the neck. Holly slit the throat of the second, pistol-wielding and drunk. Chaos followed like a flood, men stumbling for guns, yelling over each other. Another dropped, bullet to the spine. They didn't run, they fought like animals. Clay took a knife to the ribs and gave back worse. Holly disappeared into the smoke, reappearing only to shoot, to cut, to scream wordless as she drove one man into the fire itself. Maddox came out last, drunk and wild-eyed. He recognized her. "You," he said, "you ain't even a girl, you're a curse." She didn't answer. "You think that rancher made you clean. You think bleeding for dirt changes what you are." Clay stumbled toward them, blood thick on his coat. "She's better than any of us," he muttered. "She's a rabid dog," Maddox hissed, "and I put those down." He drew his pistol. Holly didn't flinch. She raised the knife she'd used to gut rabbits, held it like gospel, and when Maddox charged, she stepped into him and shoved the blade up under his ribs. He staggered once, coughed, dropped. Clay caught her as she swayed. "It's done," he whispered. "No," she said, "it's beginning." They left the camp burning behind them, took what the men had, food, ammo, horses, and buried only what needed burying. The sky turned red with dawn, and the wind picked up with the scent of ash. Back at the ranch, Holly didn't rest. She cleaned every weapon, replaced every broken board, dug a new well with her blistered hands. Clay watched her from the porch. Knew the scars on her back told stories she'd never speak, knew she wasn't done. There were still names out there, still ghosts to bury. But for now, she was here. And she was his, not because he bought her, because she chose to stay. The new well struck water deep and clean. Clay called it luck. Holly said nothing, just sat on the edge with her sleeves rolled and arms streaked from digging. She hadn't spoken Maddox's name since the night they burned his camp, but Clay could feel it in the way she moved now, always facing the door, never sitting with her back to the window. She slept light and woke lighter. The graves they dug out past the juniper line had no markers, no names. Clay had offered wood, stone, anything. Holly just shook her head. "They know what they did," she said. She meant the men. Maybe also the ghosts. The sheriff came again 3 weeks later, this time not alone. He brought the preacher and 2 men from the county council. Holly saw them from the barn roof and climbed down slow, wiping pitch from her hands. "Mr. Bledsoe," the sheriff began, "we're here about the girl." Clay stood still. "She's not a girl, she's Holly." One of the councilmen stepped forward. "There's been complaints, said she's dangerous, that she protects what's hers," Clay cut in. "You came this far, you know what's true." The preacher didn't speak, just looked at Holly with a sadness she didn't return. "You kill them?" the sheriff asked, quiet. Holly didn't flinch, every last one. "Why?" "Because they were coming," she said. "Because they wouldn't stop." The preacher cleared his throat. "You could have let the law handle it." Clay laughed once, bitter. "The law let em burn the Teague place. The law left my brother to rot." The sheriff's jaw clenched. "You harboring a killer, Clay." "She's family." Silence stretched until it snapped. "We can't stop what folks say," the councilman muttered, "but we won't come again, long as she stays put." They left without shaking hands. That night, Clay poured her the first shot of whiskey he ever gave her. She sipped once, gagged, then drank again. "You could leave," he said. "You've done enough." Holly stared at the fire. "Ain't about done." "Ain't ever been." "You still hunting?" She shook her head. "They'll come to me." Clay didn't ask who, he already knew. The wind changed that fall. Leaves never turned in that part of the desert. But something shifted, more riders on the road, more firelight on distant hills. Someone set a trap near the cattle troughs, poisoned grain mixed with nails, 2 heifers dead by morning. Clay buried them alone while Holly rode east, following a rumor. She came back with a gunshot in her side and a letter stitched into her coat lining. Clay boiled water, stitched her up, poured whiskey till her teeth stopped chattering. When she finally spoke, it was through a clenched jaw. "It's them, the ones who took me the first time, before the brothel, before Del Rio." Clay paused, blood and thread on his fingers. Names. One, Jernigan. He knew the name, everyone did. A rancher turned slaver, ran a hidden line through the borderlands, never caught, never tried. The kind of man who could buy a girl, break her, and vanish her in the dust. "He's building again," Holly said. "Out near Choya Ridge." "How do you know?" "I saw it." Clay's hands tightened. "You're going after him." She nodded. "Soon." "You want me there?" "No." He didn't argue. Instead, he gave her his father's pistol, the one with the ivory grip and one notch already carved. "Make sure he remembers," Clay said. She left 2 nights later. This time she didn't ride in the open. She traveled by goat paths, sleeping under bramble and stone, watching from the hills as wagons rolled through the canyon gap. She waited. Jernigan's compound stood behind rows of mesquite and black iron fence. Slaves moved like ghosts in the yard, women, boys, a few who looked younger than she'd been when they first took her. Holly knelt in the dust until her knees bled. Then she moved. She came at night, fire first. Smoke choked the rafters before the dogs even barked. She moved through it like a shadow, shooting only once, cutting clean. She found Jernigan on the upper floor, dressing in panic. He grabbed a girl by the wrist and pulled her in front of him like a shield. "You don't want to do this," he hissed. "I can pay." She didn't speak. "You're one of mine, ain't you?" he sneered. "Don't lie." I remember the eyes. Holly shot him through the girl's shoulder. The child fell screaming. Jernigan flinched. She closed the distance and jammed the pistol into his gut. "You're right," she said. "You do remember me." She pulled the trigger once, twice. Then again and again. When the chamber clicked dry, she stood over what was left and looked at the girl. "Run," she said. The fire took the rest. She didn't return for 4 days. Clay was chopping wood when he saw her. Dust in her teeth, ash on her coat, eyes glassy with miles. She walked right past him and dropped the pistol on the porch. "Jernigan's done," she said. He nodded. "Others?" he asked. She didn't look at him. "Always." And in the distance, the sun dropped behind the rocks like a slow funeral. Winter returned with silence. No letters, no riders. The ground went hard, and the wind carved lines into every living thing. Clay watched the hills like he used to watch the weather, anxious, waiting for a break or a blow. Holly stayed near the ranch, but her eyes had gone distant again. She spoke less, slept less. The cold didn't bother her. She moved through it like a revenant. He knew she was hunting again, even if she hadn't named her quarry. He saw it in how she cleaned her guns, how she marked distances between fence posts, how she walked the perimeter with a length of rope in one hand and a whetstone in the other. One morning she didn't come in for breakfast. Clay found her in the barn building something. "What is it?" he asked. She looked up, hands dark with grease and rust. "Trap." "For what?" She didn't answer right away. "There's one left," she said. "One that started it. I didn't know his name until last week. Got it off a boy who used to run messages for him." Clay leaned against the beam. "And now?" "Now I know where he sleeps." The man's name was Arlen Stack. He wasn't a slaver, not exactly. He was worse, one of the kind that made slavers look like middlemen. He'd trafficked girls from burned-out territories for bounty, carried the tags around his belt like rabbit feet. Holly had found one of those tags near the Choya Ridge fire. Hers, blackened but legible, too far gone. Stack operated under a new name now. Preacher, they called him in the eastern settlements. Had a congregation, a bell tower, and a smile that fooled whole towns. He gave sermons on dust and sin and the cost of salvation. He shook hands with sheriffs. Holly rode for him in the first thaw. This time, Clay didn't let her go alone. They didn't speak much on the ride. There was too much memory between them now, too much shared dirt. But before they crossed the rise into the eastern county, he reached into his coat and handed her something wrapped in oilskin. The tag, she stared at it, fingers trembling. "You sure?" she asked. He nodded. "Give it back to him." Stack's church stood like a spine in the center of a wheat town called Harmony's End. Clean, white, full on Sundays, they rode in on a Saturday. Holly went alone through the front doors. He was there. Silver-haired, cloaked in vestments, preaching to the echo of his own voice as he rehearsed the next day's sermon. She stood in the aisle. He saw her, paused. Something in his eyes flickered. "You lost child?" he asked. She walked forward. "Name, Holly Bledsoe," she said. "Don't think you'll remember." He stepped back from the pulpit. "I've counseled many. God's work brings many faces." She tossed the tag at his feet. He stopped talking. "Now you remember." His mouth opened. "That's not listen, that wasn't me. I didn't." "You sold me," she said. "First to Maddox, then again I was 13. Clay stepped in then, rifle low but ready. People began gathering at the doors. "Preacher," someone called. Stack raised both hands, sweat beading. "This is slander, she's mad. You all know me, you know I preach peace." "She preaches truth," Clay said. "She's killed men," Stack shouted. "She's buried devils," Clay corrected. Stack lunged for the cross on the altar. Holly pulled her pistol. No one moved. The room held its breath. "I forgive you," Stack said, eyes desperate. I forgive you, child. You don't have to do this." She lowered the pistol, walked to him, pressed the tag to his chest. "Don't want your forgiveness," she said. "Want your confession." "I won't," he whispered. "I can't." "Then burn." She turned, walked out. Clay followed. They left the town behind them, full of whispers and rising tension. No law followed them, not that day. The fire came that night. Stack's church caught first, then the house behind it. No bodies were found, but no one saw the preacher again. Holly didn't smile. She didn't speak for days. When they reached the ranch, she sat on the porch, boots kicked off, hands limp. Clay brought her water, set it beside her, and waited. "I ain't clean," she said finally. "I thought revenge would fix something. It didn't." He sat beside her. "Revenge doesn't fix, but it ends." She nodded slowly. "I want to bury it," she said. "Then we will." She stood, walked out past the last fence line, and dug a hole with her bare hands. Into it she dropped the pistol, the tag, the knife she'd carried since the barn fight. Clay stood beside her, not speaking. She covered it all in dirt, smoothed it flat. When she turned, the wind lifted her hair and the dusk cut her face in shadow. He didn't say it out loud, but something in her was different now. Not soft, never that, but settled, forged. They walked back together, and no one came for them that winter. Spring arrived slow, not with blooms, but with breath. The hard crust of earth loosened. The cattle bore healthy calves. The wind softened enough that Clay sometimes left the door open. The land still bore its scars, blackened fence posts, blood-stained rocks half buried at the creek's bend, but nothing new burned. Holly rose with the sun, same as ever, but her silence was different now, not a wall, a choice. She spoke when she meant to, when words held weight. She laughed once, in the middle of milking a goat that kept kicking at the pail. It startled Clay so bad he dropped the feed bag. They didn't speak about the past, not much. But some nights, Clay found her out by the graves, sitting cross-legged in the dirt, whispering names. She never wrote them down. Just said them like spells, like she owed memory where mercy failed. Then one morning a rider came. He was lean, dust-bitten, carrying a badge on his vest and a telegram in his hand. Didn't smile, didn't climb down. Just nodded once when Clay stepped out. Looking for a Holly Bledsoe, he said. Clay didn't move. Why? Marshall's orders, out of Austin. Name came up in an old case. Reckon there's bounty on some of the dead she left. Clay glanced at the barn. Saw Holly leaning against the door, shotgun already resting on her shoulder. She's not what you're hunting, Clay said. The rider shrugged. Ain't me hunting her, but someone will. Clay stepped off the porch. You plan to try. The man looked at him. Long no, he said. Just came to warn her. He handed Clay the telegram and rode off. Clay unfolded it. The words were brief. A new name, someone from the Jernigan line, a cousin or partner, still running, still burning. He held the paper out to her. She didn't take it. Not mine to chase, she said. Not anymore. Clay nodded. I buried that life. You sure? She looked out past the hills, where the land rose like old bones. Nothing's ever sure. But I ain't hunting ghosts no more. They burned the telegram that night. By midsummer, Clay gave her part of the land deed, her name in ink, legal and binding, not as daughter, not as wife, as equal. Holly took it and folded it careful. Placed it in the kitchen drawer beside the coil of rope and the dried sprigs of sage she used to hang by the door. That fall, a young girl showed up on the edge of their land. Barefoot, eyes wide with old pain, couldn't have been more than 10. Holly found her first, didn't ask who she was, didn't ask who sent her. She just opened the gate, fed her, gave her boots, taught her how to set a trap. Clay watched the two of them sit by the fire that night, shadows flickering up the walls like ghosts learning to rest. He poured himself a drink, looked out over the land, and for the first time in years thought maybe the world hadn't gone all the way to ruin. Maybe vengeance had cleared just enough space for something else, not peace, but something that could last. And in the still dark of the canyon, where blood had been spilled and bones had been buried, a fire burned steady. No screams, no shadows, only a girl who had once been too far gone. And stayed.